Based on these first 11 championship matches, is your club above or below the expectations you had at the start of the season? Let's talk about it. In today's video, we're going to be throwing each championship club into a tier list based on whether or not I think they've met their expectations in these first 11 matches. Now, I'm sort of going to be basing this tier list on my own expectations for each championship club at the start of the season, and obviously fans of different clubs will have different expectations themselves, so feel free to comment down below whether or not you think your side's been meeting expectations so far. But without any further ado, let's jump in. So this is the tier list we're going to be throwing each of the championship clubs into. They've either been above expectations, about right, or below expectations. Starting out with Birmingham, I'm going to have to put them into the above category. It was a really positive summer transfer window for Birmingham, but I thought the progress would be a lot more slow and steady than it's actually proven to be, obviously. They find themselves in the top 6 right now, and based on these first 11 matches, I think that Birmingham have probably been working ahead of schedule. Obviously, the new ownership there made the bold decision over the international break to part ways with John Eustace to bring in Wayne Rooney, so we'll have to wait and see whether or not Wayne Rooney can carry on sort of overperforming and get Birmingham in and around this top 6 conversation come the end of the season. But right now, from where I had Birmingham predicted at the start of the season, the position they're in the table right now, I'd say they're above expectations based on where I thought they'd be right now. Blackburn, I'm going to have to put them slightly below expectations. A few people were expecting a little bit of a fall off from Rovers this season, but they currently find themselves 17th in the Championship. Not been the best of starts to the season for them, although they did have that good result before the international break against QPR, and their underlying attacking numbers have actually been quite promising so far this season. They've just not consistently got a tune out of that squad so far, so we'll wait and see on Blackburn. I still think there's more to come from that side based on a lot of the performances and underlying numbers, but based on the points on the board right now and the results in some of the games that they have lost, I'm going to have to put them below expectations. Bristol City, they found themselves 14th in the Championship, and I say that's about right. Now, the problem with this part of the Championship is it's just ridiculously close. Bristol City in and around that middle region of the table, but they're only 3 points off the top 6, so after the international break, if a side like Bristol City puts together a consistent run of results, they can shoot up the league like that, and before you know it, they'll be in the top 6 conversation. Right now though, from what I've seen from that Bristol City side, performance levels wise, I'd say it's about right from my sort of expectation levels for them from the start of the season. Slow and steady progress has sort of been what's been delivered by Nigel Pearson. I think we've sort of had more examples of that so far. Cardiff, absolutely above expectations. They were a side who I thought would improve on last season's finish, but only ever so slightly. What Errol Bulut's been able to deliver so far has been really promising. Cardiff all of a sudden in and around the playoff picture, scoring more goals. They've had more firepower this season. Obviously the summer recruitment turned out to be really positive, despite the fact they were working with an embargo as well. And generally speaking, I've actually quite enjoyed watching Cardiff in a few matches this season, where that wasn't always the case with them last season. So really like what Cardiff are doing right now, and definitely working above expectations. I thought they'd be in and around sort of 19th, that sort of region of the table. They're way above that right now. Coventry, I'd probably say slightly below expectations, but I do think Coventry will eventually click. They've had a bit of a slow start to this season, but I do think there's evidence that they're growing into this season, maybe in a similar way they did last season, and in a few months' time, I think Mark Robins will gradually bring up the levels, and Coventry all of a sudden will be back in the playoff conversation. Once again, the region of the table they're in right now is ridiculously close. I think they're only 3 or so points away from the playoffs, and obviously a lot of new players being bedded in at Coventry right now. The real sticking point that Mark Robins has had so far is Coventry have just been too draw heavy up until this point in this season. If they sort out that, turn a few more of those draws into wins, they'll shoot up the league, and before you know it, I think they will be back around the playoff picture. But based on the results so far, you know, only 3 wins from their first 11 matches, a lot of draws in that as well. I think they're slightly below expectations, but I'm expecting them to improve after the international break. Huddersfield, they're 19th at the moment, just 2 wins from their first 11 matches, but honestly, they probably are about right from where I thought that squad would be at the start of the season, based on where they are after their first 11 matches. I'd say pound for pound, it's probably where a lot of people thought Huddersfield would be. Obviously, they went ahead and made that managerial change. Warnock bowing out for Darren Moore to come in. Darren Moore still waiting for his first win in at Huddersfield. Despite all of that, I still think from expectation levels, they're probably about right at the moment, albeit still very close in the Championship. Hull, I'm going to say they are above expectations. They've been a side who I've actually been really impressed with so far this season. Obviously went on a really good unbeaten run at one stage of the season as well. I had them sort of in that lower mid-table region of the season before a ball had been kicked. Just thought they'd be maybe a little bit too draw heavy to properly kick up the league, and while there have been quite a few draws for Hull recently, I think the overall principles are really well established there since Rossini has come in. It was another good summer recruitment where they built upon the squad from last season, and they have put their hat in the ring to be in and around the playoffs this season, and from where I had them at the start of the year, I think that's above their expectations. Ipswich, without a shadow of a doubt, above expectations. Now, there was a lot of hype around Kieran McKenna's side this season. Definitely the most sort of fancied side coming up from League One in quite a while, but I don't think anyone predicted a start to be just as electric as it's actually been. The fact that Ipswich now have an 8-point gap between themselves and my side Preston, who are occupying that spot in third at the moment, is amazing. But not just the points they've got on the board, but the style of football, especially at Portman Road, where they just open up the pitch and absolutely outgun teams on a weekly basis. Really impressed with Ipswich. Whether or not they can keep up this consistency throughout an entire Championship campaign, you know, who knows, but right now, without a question, above expectations, and yeah, long may they continue doing it. Leeds are in 5th right now, and to be honest, I'd say Leeds are probably about right. I mean, the fact that Ipswich and Leicester have started so quickly in this Championship campaign, it does leave Leeds with quite a bit of work to be done if they want to go ahead and catch up those sides, and if automatic promotion was the aim for them. But generally speaking, before a ball had been kicked this season, I did have Leeds in the playoffs. I didn't have them in one of the top 2 spots, and Daniel Farke's sides always take a little bit of time to sort of feel their way into this season, and I wouldn't be surprised that come November going into December, Leeds do stumble upon that winning formula, and they do start to just bounce out the wins on a weekly basis, like we saw with Daniel Farke's Norwich sides in years gone by. But as of right now, considering the quite hectic summer, how late they were in doing a lot of their business, I'd say that 5th in the Championship for their expectations right now is probably about right. Leicester, I'm going to have to put them in about right. It seems harsh because they've had a pretty much flawless start to this Championship season, but let's not have, you know, any two ways about this. Absolutely every man and their dog was predicting Leicester to win the Championship title this season, and they've gone about doing that. It looks like that'll be the case this season. They have looked a cut above most sides, apart from really Ipswich, but for 11 matches, the fact that Leicester have a 10-point gap between them and third is absolutely ridiculous. They're currently projected to break all sorts of records in the Championship, and yeah, there's just no signs of that Leicester side slowing down right now. The quality on show for Maresca is obvious to see. With all that being said, I think this probably was expected from Leicester. They were expected to be the outstanding side in the division this season, but the proof's in the pudding. They've gone ahead and done that so far. Middlesbrough, they're all the way down in 16th at the moment, and based on the full season, they're definitely below expectations right now, but the signs before this latest international break were a lot more promising from Michael Carrick's side. They've now won 4 games on the bounce, and it does look like they're getting back to that side that a lot of people thought they'd be coming into this season. Middlesbrough were one of the most fancied sides for promotion coming into this season, let's not forget. I think that at the start of the season, before a ball had been kicked, I had them in 3rd place. First month or so, they look miles off the pace, but it does seem as if they've stumbled upon that winning formula once again. Like I said, based on the full season, definitely below expectations, but in a month or two, I think slowly Middlesbrough will rise up again, up this tier list. Millwall, they're 15th at the moment, another side that's only 3 points away from the top 6. With all that being said, probably slightly below expectations right now for Millwall. I was expecting at the start of the season another year where they'd be knocking on the door for the top 6, and that could still go ahead and happen. The problem that Millwall have had so far is they've really struggled to nail down much consistency in their play. There's been a couple of occasions where they've been turned over at the Den and it's got a little bit ugly with some of the goals they've conceded, but there's been other occasions where they've looked a little bit more solid and they've looked a little bit more like they wanted to have a go at teams, but they've not quite nailed down a consistent pattern of play this season. I think ultimately that's cost them in a few matches, and right now I'd say they're probably slightly below expectations, being 15th. Norwich City, they're 7th in the Championship right now. Wasn't a great run of form leading up to this latest international break. It does feel like a little bit of groundwork is needed there to get things back on track, and things could spiral into a bit of a dodgy run of form, especially with them being without Sargent and Barnes as of late. With my expectations though of Norwich coming into this season, I'd say that they've probably been about right, to be honest, based on the quality that's in that squad right now. What I was expecting from them at the start of the season, they were one of those sides who I was expecting to be there or thereabouts in the playoff picture. Whether or not they'll have enough to get over the line, I think largely probably will depend on injuries and other factors like that. But they had that really good start to the season. Injuries have set in since then, and all of a sudden there's a bit more unpredictability. But based on the entire campaign so far, for expectations, I'd say they're about right for where they are. Plymouth Argyle, they're 18th in the Championship at the moment. For expectations, I'd say that's probably about right. The vast majority of people that you would have asked at the start of the season, I think, did have Plymouth surviving. The bookies not quite as kind on Plymouth with the relegation odds at the start of the season, but most content creators, fan you'd ask, and myself personally did have Plymouth surviving. That's been the case so far. They've actually been probably one of the most entertaining sides to watch as a neutral so far this season, and the Plymouth fans have experienced all the highs and lows so far that come along with that. Defensively, pretty vulnerable, but they've also been quite good to watch on the eye going forward from a creative aspect. Back-to-back losses before the international break was a bit of a frustration, but generally speaking, I think that Plymouth are about right for what a lot of people and myself expected at the start of the season from them. My side, Preston North End, absolutely above expectations. To be third in the Championship after 11 matches, I don't think that any North End fan would have believed that at the start of the season. Now, it was a real dodgy run of form that we have hit before this latest international break. 3 consecutive defeats. We are going to have to turn that around after this international break when we return against Millwall on Saturday. With that being said, I think we probably do have to give Ryan Lowe quite a bit of credit for this start to the season. Considering some of the key players who we've had out injured, we've still not got a look at Kelvin Ramsey, who's on loan from Liverpool. Emil Reece, Ched Evans have both been out. Ben Whiteman slowly being eased back into that squad, but he's not been at full fitness so far this season. So a lot of key players that Lowe has been without so far, and despite all of that, I think we have come out of a lot of tight matches on the winning end, and before that dodgy run where we lost 3 on the bounce, we were looking quite solid. And considering I, like a lot of other Preston fans, had us predicted to be sort of lower mid-table this season, the fact we're third at the moment, we definitely can't be complaining. QPR, not a good run of form before this latest international break. They currently find themselves in the bottom 3. With that being said, they're probably about right for expectations. I did have them as one of my bottom 3 at the start of the season. A lot of other fans were thinking the same, and actually a lot of QPR fans also anticipating a difficult season before a ball had been kicked. Obviously, time will tell what will happen with Ainsworth if this current run of form doesn't turn around after this international break, but from what was expected of that QPR squad and what they've delivered on the pitch so far, it's probably in line with what a lot of people predicted. I think you could probably also throw Rotherham into that boat as well. Rotherham, a lot of people's picks to be relegated at the start of the season. They have been competitive in a lot of the matches they've played, even some of the ones where they have been on the losing end of. But quite similar to last season, what's been their real Achilles heel so far this season has been that dodgy away form. They did get their first point on the road before the international break against Southampton, and maybe that can be a bit of a template for them to go forward, because I'm not sure they'll be able to rely upon their home form exclusively to keep them up again this year. I think they will need to grind out a few wins on the road on top of that. So despite the fact that the Millers currently find themselves in the bottom 3, in terms of expectation levels at the start of the season, from myself, a lot of other people, it's probably about right for where they are right now. Now, Sheffield Wednesday are an interesting one because they were the most popular pick to go down at the start of the season. They're currently bottom of the Championship, and so you could angle it one way and say they're probably matching their expectations. A lot of people thought they'd be the worst side, and so far they've turned out to be that. Despite the fact that a lot of people had them in the bottom 3. I'd actually still go as far to say that they've still been below a lot of people's expectations, myself included, because I thought Wednesday had struggled coming into this season, but I didn't think they'd be just as bad as they've turned out to be so far. No wins from their first 11 matches. It's absolutely unheard of. Obviously, they've already gone ahead and made that managerial change. Whether or not they'll have a bounce now after this international break, we'll have to wait and see. But, I mean, the lack of goals in that squad right now and real championship quality, it's absolutely killed them so far. So, despite the fact that I, like a lot of people, thought Wednesday would be in the bottom 3 this season, and in a lot of cases thought they'd finish bottom, while they are in that position right now, they've still been worse than I thought they'd be. Big job for the new manager in there to go ahead and turn around the ship. Southampton, going to have to put them into the below expectations category. They're not in the top 6 right now. I think that was a bare minimum expectation from Southampton coming into this season. I had them predicted to be in the top 2. They're currently 11 points off Ipswich in second place right now. So a lot of work needed to turn that around. They have had their ups and downs. You know, the month of September in particular was a really ugly one for Russell Martin's men. They have come out of the tunnel at the other end of that though, but I think a consistent run after this international break is absolutely needed from this Southampton squad. They're 10th in the table right now, and that's definitely below expectations from where I had them predicted at the start of the season. Stoke City, another team I'm going to have to put in below expectations. A lot of moving pieces at Stoke right now with how hectic that summer transfer window was for Alex Neil looking to reintegrate all of those players. There have been a few injuries that have cropped up as well, which certainly haven't helped Neil's case. With that being said, the fact they're just outside of the relegation zone by the skin of their teeth right now, where this was tipped to be by a lot of Stoke fans maybe this season where they finally did push on and progress, that's just not transpired so far. And Alex Neil, like I say, is definitely a manager feeling the heat right now. Averaging less than a point per game when you've been backed as much as Neil has been in the summer, yeah, it's not the best recipe, and given their league standing, the football they've played so far, it's been well below my expectations of Stoke. Sunderland, now I did have them predicted to be in the top 6 at the start of the season, but I'd actually still say they've been slightly above my expectations so far. Took a little bit of time to get things going. They had that loss to Ipswich early on when they came to Deepdale early on in the season as well. Things hadn't quite clicked for Tony Mowbray's men, but since that point they've been on a really good run of form, and there have been a few ups and downs, but on their day I think Sunderland are one of the best sides to watch in the Championship. Jack Clark's been absolutely electric off that left hand side so far this season. Joe Bellingham in that number 10 role has been fantastic, and a few other of their youngsters really coming up to the front as well. They're 4th in the Championship, almost averaging 2 goals per game right now. I'd say they're slightly above my expectations, but once again, very close in that region of the table. Swansea City now slap bang in the middle of the Championship table. They're 12th, having won their last 4 consecutive matches. Now, based on the first couple of months under Michael Duff, Swansea were well below expectations, but after this recent run of results, it's probably about right for where I had Swansea predicted at the start of the season, and where a lot of other people thought they'd be in and around as well. Credit to Michael Duff, because there were a few moments where it really didn't look like a good situation, where in those early months the Swansea fans just hadn't taken to him whatsoever, and he did make quite a few mistakes in those early months, but they've come out the other side of that run of form, and yeah, who knows what's possible after this international break if they do continue this run. Watford, I'm going to have to say below expectations. Start of the season, I did predict it to be a bit of a tough transitional year for Watford, obviously. Lost a few big players, it was an overhaul of that squad, which was probably needed, but the results so far this season just haven't been there. Just 2 wins from their first 11 matches. 20th in the Championship table right now, just 2 points outside of that relegation zone. Defensively, I think Watford have been really frustrating to watch so far this season. A lot of individual mistakes in their play, and at times you can see what Ishmael's trying to achieve there, but it's just not been achieved so far this season, and without a doubt they've been below expectations. Finishing it off then with West Brom, they're 11th in the Championship right now, and I'd say that's probably about right for whereabouts I had them at the start of the season. West Brom, their performance levels really have been fluctuating throughout the past few weeks. I still maintain they've been the best side I've seen come to Deepdale this season. They absolutely wiped the floor with us, but that's certainly not been the case for West Brom week in, week out this season, or they would be up there in and around the top 6. Obviously, coming into this season, there was a lot of uncertainty about West Brom because of the overall ownership issue, and I think I, like a lot of other people, had them to be a sort of middle of the road side, and that's sort of what they've turned out to be so far, albeit not a long way off from the playoffs, which would be the ultimate goal. There we have it though, guys. Those are, in my opinion, how each Championship side has been doing so far this season in meeting their expectations, or certainly the expectations that I had for all of these sides at the start of the season. But I certainly want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What have you made with your Championship club and their start to the season? How have you seen the first 11 matches? Do you think you're currently working above or below expectations? Get all your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you all in the next one.